welcome to Lynchburg Live. I'm your host, Linda Smith. In June, we're commemorating the 150th anniversary of the Civil War Battle of Lynchburg. My guests tonight are Kevin Shroyer, chairman of the Lynchburg Civil War Sesquicentennial Committee. I'm going to have trouble all night long with that word. And Greg Starbuck, director of Historic Sandusky. They'll be telling us about the local activities that are planned around the commemoration. Greg, Kevin, welcome to Lynchburg Live. It's good to have you back. All right, as we get started, could you just tell us what the Civil War Sesquicentennial is?
Well, certainly, Sesquicentennial is just a fancy way of saying 150. So this is the 150th anniversary. You know, in our nation's history, you know, we observed the end of the American Revolution, the bicentennial. You remember that back in the 70s,
right?
And you know, we're coming up on the 70th anniversary of D-Day, and you know, typically around these times of 50, 100, 150, 200 are times to reflect, and so
right.
Simply the 150th anniversary.
Right, and this is also the Sesquicentennial of the Battle of Lynchburg, the 150th Battle of Lynchburg, and I want to ask you, what are the dates that's going to be commemorated in the Lynchburg area?
Well, the battle took place June 17, 1864. Now that falls in the middle of the week.
Right.
Our activities are taking place the weekend prior and the weekend after, and then also a few during the week. What's
the significance of the Civil War Sesquicentennial and the Battle of Lynchburg?
Well, I think the significance is it gives everyone an opportunity to reflect back on the events during that time period of the Civil War. The various battles that were fought during the various years, the leaders, the role civilians played, the role of the African Americans in our society. It gives everybody a chance to reflect back, to pay their respects, to honor what happened during those years.
Kevin, tell me what role you play in this upcoming commemorative.
Well, I'm the chairman of the Lynchburg Sesquicentennial Committee. Greg was initially the chairman for the first couple of years of its existence, and I've taken over and been the chairman now for the last couple of years. So basically, I envision my role as the chairman is just to kind of be the captain that is steering the ship, and I've got a committee of a good 10 to 12 people that are helping me along the way, and everybody's got their own little roles and jobs to do, and we've worked very well together as a team for the past 4 to 5 years for this week that's coming up in June.
You know, just researching this show, something's going on almost every day during that time. And I think, I mean, it has to be a large undertaking for both of you. How about you, Greg?
It is. You know, Historic Sandusky was one of the focal points during the battle, so a lot of the activities revolve around what happened at Sandusky and the people and events there. So you know, we do have an action-packed couple of days set forth. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to, you know, this is about both education and commemoration. Right. So we have many activities both at Sandusky and all the other sites that we'll talk about in a little bit. And there's something out there for everybody. If somebody's busy on this particular Saturday, well, they have Sunday, or they have the next Saturday, or the next Sunday. You know, there's no reason not to come and partake of this opportunity.
Now, I'm going to say this word correctly.
Yes.
The Sesquicentennial.
Yes.
Is going to be commemorated in all the areas where the Civil War took place. Is that correct?
Well, it has been. You know, in Virginia, officially the Sesquicentennial began in 2009, commemorating 1859 when the John Brown raid took place in Harper's Ferry. And events have been unfolding following the activities in 1861, 62, 63, right. 64. Now this year, 2014, and we're in 1864 commemoration, is the bloodiest year of the war, one of the busiest year of the war, especially in Virginia. So it seems like every locality is having some type of a commemoration, a tour, a history. So it's a very busy year in Virginia.
Now there's a history mobile. Tell me about that. I think that's really interesting.
One of the things that happened, you know, in the Centennial, that was put forth and managed from a national level. The Congress actually got involved and put money and time into it. This time around, it's really fallen upon the states, and Virginia has taken the lead in the Sesquicentennial activities because we are pretty much ground zero for the war. And they spent money, and they got a semi-tractor-trailer truck, and the back of it they've converted into a traveling museum. And it's really pretty neat. They bring it and they set it up, and there's parts of it that expand like an RV, and you have stairs, and you go up in it, and there's different rooms, and there's activities and videos and things on the wall to look at and explore. And it covers all aspects, you know, especially the civilians, the blue, the gray, whites, blacks. It's pretty fascinating.
You know, you kind of answered my next question, but I was going to ask you, is it true that more battles, Civil War battles, were fought in the state of Virginia?
Yes.
All right.
Tennessee is a distant second.
And when was the Battle of Lynchburg? You just told me a little while ago. I think you said from the 17th, June 17th.
Yeah, 2 days, June 17th and 18th. And what's interesting, you talk about these anniversaries and commemorations.
Right.
People during the Civil War were very cognizant of that aspect of life, and they remarked at the time that that was the anniversary of the Battle of Waterloo, and they saw some, you know, they looked at the Battle of Lynchburg like, is this going to be our Waterloo? Because that was June 18th, the anniversary of Waterloo.
So how significant in the grand scheme of the Civil War was the Battle of Lynchburg?
Well, it was a battle that it didn't really create a lot of casualties. You know, you look at a lot of Civil War battles, and it's unreal the amount of casualties and the fighting and the bloodshed that takes place. But at the end of the day, not much really changed in terms of the war or that campaign. But we think that Lynchburg was fairly significant. You know, not a lot of casualties, but strategically, in the scheme of things, in Virginia in 1864, Lynchburg became a target because at that point in the war, Lynchburg was very valuable to Virginia, the Confederacy, to Robert E. Lee's army, and basically helped keep Lee's army alive by being a supply center. What goods and food were being created and brought in from the Shenandoah Valley came through Lynchburg. So basically, Lynchburg was a lifeline keeping the Confederacy alive. And if they could knock Lynchburg out, then even for a day, then maybe that ends the war.
So that's why General Grant said if he could get take Lynchburg for as small an amount of time as 1 day, that it would be significant.
Doesn't take much to strike a match.
Yeah.
Much time to strike a match and set things on fire.
Now, Kevin, you had told me that there were some fairly well-known generals in this war.
There were a number.
Who were they?
Well, of course, the two most famous, I guess you could say, that people tend to focus on is the Union General David Hunter, and then the Confederate General Jubal Anderson Early. But then you had some a little bit lesser ranking generals, brigadier generals and things of that nature. You had John B. Gordon here. You had Harry Hayes here. Those are Confederate generals. On the Union side, you had William Averill. You had George Crook. Back on the Confederate side, you had John Imboden, you had John McCausland. So there was quite a few generals here in Lynchburg for this battle.
And the battle actually, excuse me, Kevin, produced a Medal of Honor recipient?
It did.
It did, yes.
Yeah, Kevin can.
Yes, John Mosteller, who was in Company B of the 54th Pennsylvania Infantry, received the Medal of Honor for his actions that occurred on the second day of the battle on June the 18th, 1864. There was a Confederate artillery position up on a bluff over where Lynchburg College now stands, near the track behind Hopwood Hall. And the 54th Pennsylvania Infantry was ordered to charge the battery position, charge uphill, and run the gunners off, put it out of commission, take control of it, do whatever you needed to do. Well, all the officers, higher ranking NCOs were down, and it left Mosteller as a lowly private to be the guy to take charge of the situation, and he was able to encourage and round up the remnants of the 54th Pennsylvania and lead them up that hill.
How cool.
And they successfully got up the hill, and they overran the battery and ran the gunners off or captured them, or essentially took possession of that artillery position. And for that, he received the Medal of Honor.
That's a story I hadn't heard before.
Well, and if I could add, not only with the generals and the Medal of Honor, there's a whole host of interesting people that are at this battle. There's a man who's a general who's a former vice president of the United States, John C. Breckinridge. Mm-hmm. You have 2 future presidents here during the battle at Sandusky, Rutherford B. Hayes and William McKinley. Mm-hmm. You have Moses Ezekiel, who's the famed sculptor, artist, later knighted Sir Moses Ezekiel, was here as a VMI cadet. Just a whole number of people. Plecker, I forget his first name, but he, after the war, opened up a photography studio here in Lynchburg, downtown on Main Street, and he was in the battle. Just a whole host. I mean, I could go on and on, but there's numbers.
Some of the names that Kevin mentioned are names that I've heard of people who've lived here, who are living here currently. I assume they're descendants. Cool. All right, now the hospital complex in Lynchburg at the time, that was an important...
Well, it was. Lynchburg was host to a very large hospital, military hospital complex. That was a result of its isolated geography. It was a protected sort of area behind the lines, a good place to take your wounded men. Had numbers of hospital warehouse buildings that were great, to convert into hospital buildings. The transportation facilities allowed you to take those patients to Lynchburg, and so all those factors together made Lynchburg an important hospital center.
I think that people may not be aware of the importance that Lynchburg played. I mean, in listening to you all and knowing you all for several years now, I've been more aware of it.
Well, sometimes the hospital population that was here was greater than the city's population.
Oh my goodness. All right, so what exists today locally that's a reminder of the Battle of Lynchburg?
Well, of course, you have Greg's gem,
right.
Historic Sandusky, is first and foremost, I think. But the rebuilt South River Quaker Meeting House out on Ford Avenue, where Quaker Memorial Presbyterian Church now stands, that was in pretty bad shape. The meeting house itself was in pretty bad shape during the battle. You can see photographs of it that were taken right afterwards, but it was there as the battle swirled all around it. So, you've got homes downtown here in the Garland Hills area that were here that served as hospitals, private hospitals. I think we still have 1 or 2 of the original hospital buildings still standing. I know we lost one a couple years ago, fell. But I think we still have 1 or 2 maybe. I know we have at least one on Dunbar Drive that's still standing. So.
Which makes me come to this next question. You've been doing some restoration at Historic Sandusky. Is that in preparation for this commemoration?
Well, it's something we needed to do and wanted to do anyways, but it's a sort of a nice convergence of 2 projects. We are wrapping up the exterior restoration of the house, and we're about 98% done. We have a few little bits and pieces to do, and we have also been working for the last 6 months on the interior restoration of the house, and that takes a fair amount of research and work, and I think we brought in 5 or 6 different contractors from both Lynchburg and out of state to come in and study and do the specialized work. And for this weekend, we plan to debut the restored parlor of Sandusky. And this, of course, the parlor is the most important room because that's the room where David Hunter basically made his strategy. It was his war planning room. So we're real excited about having the parlor, and we're starting to work on other rooms in the house as well.
That's great. Is that funded by donations or by Historic Society or?
Mostly grants and private citizens that like what we're doing, and they give us a donation, and then we try to use that as frugally as possible.
I know that Lynchburg people are so good about coming out and wanting to see those things done and making donations. I think that's so cool. All right, tell us just a little bit about Hunter's Raid for people who may not know that history.
Sure. You know, as I said before, 1864 is the most dramatic, busiest year of the war. And what spurred that was Ulysses S. Grant, becoming overall commander of the Union Army. And his strategy was just to hit the South hard in a lot of places. He had a grand strategy to, of course, William Tecumseh Sherman started cutting through Georgia and South Carolina. That was part of the strategy. Grant himself was going to push hard at Petersburg, and Ben Butler was pushing hard also in central Virginia. And then Franz Sigel, a German-born general, was given the Army of West Virginia and told to wreak havoc in the Shenandoah Valley. Well, he lost at the Battle of Newmarket, was quickly replaced by David Hunter. Hunter resumed that mission, and Hunter cut a path through Staunton, Lexington, and eventually to Lynchburg. And so it was about a 3-week campaign that went through those cities to Lynchburg, and then when Hunter was defeated at the Battle of Lynchburg, he retreated, and the Confederate Army chased him back into West Virginia. So there's a lot of action.
Really,
a lot of cities and geographies here in Central Virginia have a stake in this story because it happened across several localities.
All right, now, can you just sort of briefly tell us some of the events that are planned? And then we'll look at some pictures that you brought.
Sure. Well, we kick off the weekend of June 13th, 14th, and 15th. June 13th, reenactors will begin arriving in town. The Confederates will be setting up camp at Quaker Memorial Presbyterian Church, 5810 Ford Avenue. The Federal reenactors will be coming to Historic Sandusky. Other than that, the only thing that's really going on Friday, June the 13th, is a cemetery tour at Presbyterian Cemetery on Grace Street. And then moving into the weekend, from 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock, the living history camps, whether it be the Confederate camp or the Federal camp, are open to the public. There'll be a variety of things going on: music, drilling, demonstrations, just all kinds of stuff going on. Both camps will have things going on throughout the day. Speakers, and Greg showing the shortened version of the Hunter's Raid film throughout the day, throughout the whole weekend.
Which is excellent.
And then as we move into the week, when we get to the actual dates that mark 150 years to the day, we have a couple of events going on during the week. On Tuesday, June the 17th, we have a banquet with National Park Service historian and author Philip Greenwalt, who will be talking about the Second Corps of the Army of Northern Virginia and what it was doing in 1864 before, during, and after the Battle of Lynchburg, and that's going to be at the Hill City House. That's the only event we are offering for the entire commemoration that there's a fee attached to it, and that's a $25 ticket price. By advance purchase, we're selling tickets, and that's basically to cover the cost of the establishment, the food, and so forth. But everything else we're offering is absolutely free of charge. And then on Wednesday, June the 18th, we've already talked about this, is when we're going to honor John Mosteller and his gallant actions that resulted in his receiving the Medal of Honor. And we're marking that with a service at 6:30 over at Lynchburg College, on the site where there's now a small monument that was erected a few years ago to the 54th Pennsylvania for what occurred there. And then as we move into the final weekend, there's all kinds of activities going on at the Legacy Museum. There's Civil War Day at Old City Cemetery. So from one weekend to the next weekend, and in between, we got a lot of stuff going on.
That's great.
The best place to go is to the Discover Lynchburg website, www.discoverlynchburg.org. We have all the events listed on there day by day of what's going on.
If somebody just wanders into town, could they find out information at the Visitor Center?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but the website's probably the best comprehensive. We'll have a flyer coming out soon that has a printed schedule.
Okay.
But the website's probably the best source.
You've brought some wonderful pictures. Phil, if you'll put the pictures up on the screen, we'll get Greg and Kevin to tell us what they are.
Well, that's the DVD cover from our tour of Lynchburg. We did this about 8 years ago. If you want to have a guided tour of the Civil War sites of Lynchburg, this would be what you would want to use, Ed Barst, National Park Service Historian video tour.
There you go.
Well, that's the poster advertising the banquet lecture that I was referring to that's happening
Right.
at the Hill City House on Tuesday, June the 17th, 150 years to the day from the first day of the Battle of Lynchburg. We got Philip Greenwalt coming, and he's going to be talking, as I mentioned, about the Second Corps Army of Northern Virginia in 1864 and the transition of it from Richard Ewell in command to Jubal Early being in command as we approach the Battle of Lynchburg. It's $25 a ticket for that.
And that's the flyer for the activities taking place on the first weekend, mostly concentrated at Historic Sandusky and the Quaker Meeting House. And I think there's also that weekend some tours at Presbyterian
Yes.
Cemetery.
There are.
But that's basically showing all the things that are happening that first weekend.
I love that picture.
Yeah, and that's a modern picture, but it's done in the old-timey way. But that's Corbin Hazlett, who's a young man who's specialized in playing the banjo in the old Joe Sweeney style of playing. It's a fretless banjo with a skin head and gut
cool.
strings, and it's really got a neat sound. And he'll be playing, performing that first weekend at Sandusky, performing songs that Sweeney made famous.
That's wonderful. There's also a concert. Is this,
Yes.
this the concert?
Well, no, he'll be doing programs during the day.
Okay, all right.
There's a concert Saturday night, which I think you do have a photo of.
There we go.
And that's David Kincaid, who is from New York City. His day job is he's a rock and roll musician by trade, a bona fide rock and roll musician. But about 25 years ago, he caught an interest in the American Civil War, and that led to a lifelong passion of studying the Civil War, and especially music, and with a specialization in Irish
Cool.
music of Irish during our Civil War. So he will be coming and performing Saturday and Sunday during the day at Sandusky, but then Saturday night at 7:30 there'll be a concert that he'll present in the Sidner Performance Hall in Shule, and so we look forward to that. And of course that's David Hunter, and he is the guy that made all this happen.
Not crazy about his haircut, but
No.
hey.
And that's Historic Sandusky. That's a photo taken fairly recently showing the restored exterior. And that's the History Mobile, the traveling museum, which will be there in the parking lot at Sandusky. And again, that's something that's free to the public. And that's a map showing the entire geography of Hunter's Raid through all the localities in central Virginia and the valley. And that's the man we have that's going to be portraying David Hunter. He is going to shave his beard for the weekend and dye his hair just like Hunter did. And he'll be there. We have another man that's also portraying Jubal Early. So you can come and meet David Hunter and Jubal Early and ask them
That
what
would be
they
cool.
thought about the war. And of course, that's Jubal Early, original photograph
Right.
of Jube.
Jube.
That was his nickname,
Jube.
Jube.
Old Jubilee.
And that's the man that portrays Jubal Early, and he'll be there as well out at the Quaker Meeting House. And that's part of our restoration effort. That's redoing one of the doors going into the parlor, and that was about 2 months ago. And these are our wallpaper hangers who came in from Richmond, who are putting up the wallpaper as part of our parlor restoration.
It's beautiful.
Well, and this is, we've got the wallpaper up. Now comes time for what's called an ingrain carpet. And this is a hand-woven carpet that was woven up in Cherry Valley, New York, shipped down, and then this gentleman came in from Pennsylvania, and he pieced the carpet together on the spot and then laid it in the parlor. And
More of the same.
that's more of the same, putting the carpet down.
We've only
It's-
got about 3 more minutes.
Sure.
Let me see if we can rush through these pictures. That's
Yeah. more restoration.
More
of
restoration.
Sandusky.
It's such a beautiful house.
It is. It is.
Well, people haven't been to Sandusky in recent years. This would be a perfect weekend for them to come out and visit and see what Greg has done to the place. It has really changed over the last few years.
And one other component, if I should add, I would like to add, is our, we have an educational mission, and we just started yesterday our second field school. This is a summer 5-week 4 college credit class, but these students are actually digging, and they'll be at Sandusky during the Saturday and again on the Monday. We have the History Mobile on Monday as well.
Great.
So we're going to be giving tours. We won't have the reenactors, but we'll have the History Mobile, Archeology, so there'll even be stuff going on Monday.
That's wonderful. I have more questions to ask you, but
Sure.
we're out of time. I thank you both for coming. I'm looking forward to really coming and seeing what's going on. I think you all have put so much time and energy into getting this up and moving. It should be quite an event. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed tonight's show, and you, like I, am looking forward to the commemoration of the Battle of Lynchburg. My next show will feature construction of a very special sunroom. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.